Most people believe they understand money. They went to school. They learned math. They learned discipline. They learned how to work. But almost no one was taught how money actually works. You were taught how to become employable, how to build a resume, how to qualify for a salary. You were trained to earn, not to accumulate. That distinction shapes almost every financial outcome because earning money and building wealth operate under completely different rules. Income is linear. You trade time for money. More hours, more effort, more responsibility, more pay. It feels like progress, and in many ways it is. But income resets. Every month, every paycheck. You work, you earn, you spend, you repeat. The cycle restarts again. Even high incomes operate inside this loop. A larger salary improves lifestyle. It rarely changes the structure of the cycle, because income depends on continued effort. If effort stops, income stops. Wealth works differently. Wealth does not reset. Wealth compounds. Assets accumulate. Returns build on previous returns. Ownership expands. Compounding changes the slope of progress. Income grows step by step. Assets grow through acceleration. But the system most people move through does not prioritize accumulation. It prioritizes participation. Education prepares people to enter the workforce, not to exit dependence on it. Careers are designed to increase income, not necessarily to build ownership. Ownership changes leverage. When you own assets, income becomes optional. When you rely only on income, work remains mandatory. That difference is rarely explained early, because the system needs workers. Workers sustain institutions. Workers sustain production. Workers sustain consumption. Participation keeps the machine moving. Ownership changes who benefits from it. So the system teaches stability, reliable income, predictable progress, structured careers. Those are not mistakes. They create order. They create productivity. They create functioning economies. But they do not automatically create wealth. Wealth requires a shift most people are never shown, moving from earning to owning, from participation to leverage, from income cycles to asset accumulation. That shift does not feel dramatic at first. It often begins quietly, saving a portion of income, redirecting surplus into assets, owning small pieces of productive systems. Over time, those pieces compound. The difference grows slowly at first, then it accelerates. Meanwhile, someone operating purely inside the income cycle may continue progressing steadily. Promotions, raises, better lifestyle. But the structure remains the same. Income supports life. Effort sustains income. Time limits effort. And time is the one constraint income cannot escape. Assets can. Assets expand while you sleep, while you work, while you wait. That is why the first lesson about money is rarely the one people were taught. The goal is not just to earn. It is to redirect earning into systems that compound, until eventually, money begins working even when you are not. The moment you understand ownership, the system begins to look different. Not hostile, not conspiratorial, structured. Because every functioning economy runs on two roles: labor, ownership. Labor produces value, ownership captures a portion of that value. Both are necessary. Factories need workers, companies need employees. Services require effort. None of that is wrong. But the difference between producing value and capturing value creates the financial gap most people eventually notice. Workers exchange time for income. Owners exchange capital for leverage. Those two exchanges operate under different rules. Labor scales slowly. You can work longer hours, gain more experience, earn promotions, but effort always remains tied to time. Ownership scales differently. A business grows, a property appreciates, a portfolio compounds. One decision can influence thousands of outcomes. That is leverage. Leverage allows one unit of effort to produce disproportionate results. And leverage is what creates wealth, not effort alone. This is the second lesson about money most people were never taught. Effort is necessary, but effort without ownership has limits. The system does not hide this. It simply does not emphasize it. Because early in life, the priority is employability, skills, reliability, income stability. Ownership usually arrives later, often after years inside the workforce, after income becomes predictable, after savings begin accumulating. By that point, the gap between labor and ownership is already visible. You see companies expanding, investors accumulating, assets increasing in value. Meanwhile, salaries rise slowly. Responsibility increases, but the structure remains familiar. Work to income to lifestyle to repeat. The realization begins quietly. Working produces money. Owning produces leverage. And leverage changes outcomes over long periods of time. A worker may increase income steadily. An owner may experience uneven progress. But when ownership compounds, the acceleration becomes obvious. This is why the wealth gap widens, not because workers are failing, but because ownership compounds faster than effort. Compounding rewards time and scale. Effort is limited by both. Ownership expands beyond them. This is not about abandoning work. Work often funds ownership. Income creates the capital that eventually becomes leverage. But without that transition, effort remains trapped inside a linear structure. You improve within the system. You rarely move beyond it. Ownership changes the relationship entirely. You stop selling time. You begin accumulating influence inside systems that produce value. Businesses, equity, real estate, markets. Small pieces at first, then larger ones. Then compounding begins doing the work effort cannot. This is the shift most people eventually discover. The system did not only reward effort, it rewarded ownership. And once that difference becomes clear, money begins to behave very differently. If this made sense to you, you already understand more than most people do. This channel exists for that kind of awareness. Like the video, subscribe. Nothing here is accidental. Even after people understand ownership, many still believe effort can close the gap. Work harder, work longer, climb higher. Effort feels like the most direct path forward. It is visible, it is measurable, it produces immediate income. So the assumption becomes simple. If effort created progress before, more effort should create more progress. But effort operates inside a linear system. Linear systems move step by step. 1 hour of work produces 1 unit of value. 2 hours produce 2. Ownership operates inside a different system, exponential systems. Exponential systems behave quietly at first. Growth appears slow. Returns seem small. Nothing dramatic happens early. But exponential systems accelerate. Each return builds on the last. Each cycle expands the base. Over time, the curve bends upward. That is compounding. And compounding changes the scale of outcomes. Effort increases income. Compounding multiplies capital. Those are fundamentally different mechanics. One grows through labor. The other grows through time. Time amplifies ownership, but time does very little for income alone. You can earn more with experience, but experience cannot multiply hours. Eventually, every career encounters the same limit. Time remains fixed. Energy declines. Opportunities plateau. Ownership does not encounter those same constraints. Assets do not sleep. Assets do not burn out. Assets do not require hourly effort. They expand as systems expand. Markets grow. Businesses scale. Economies compound. When you own a portion of those systems, your capital grows alongside them. This is why effort alone rarely closes the wealth gap. Not because effort lacks value, because effort cannot accelerate. Acceleration requires leverage. Leverage requires ownership. Ownership requires earlier allocation. Without that sequence, progress remains steady but contained. Income rises gradually. Lifestyle improves gradually, but the structure never changes. Work funds life. Work sustains income. Work remains essential. Meanwhile, those who allocate capital into ownership begin experiencing a different curve. At first, nothing appears different, but over time, the acceleration becomes visible. Assets produce returns. Returns reinvest. Reinvestment compounds. Eventually, capital begins doing something effort cannot. It grows independently. That independence is the turning point, the moment when work stops being the only engine of progress. This is the lesson rarely explained early. Effort builds the starting point. Ownership builds the trajectory. Without ownership, effort keeps life moving. With ownership, money begins moving on its own. And once that shift begins, the financial system starts working with you instead of only requiring you. Once you see the difference between earning and owning, the system stops looking confusing. It starts looking mechanical. Income enters your life. That income can move in two directions: consumption or accumulation. Consumption improves the present: better housing, better transportation, better experiences. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. But consumption resets. Every month, every cycle, the money is used and the process begins again. Accumulation behaves differently. Income is redirected. Assets are acquired. Ownership expands. Those assets begin producing returns. Those returns reinvest. Reinvestment compounds. Compounding accelerates. At first, the difference is invisible. Two people earn similar incomes. Two people live similar lifestyles. Progress appears identical. But the structures are different. One life runs on income. The other slowly builds ownership. Years pass. Income increases. Responsibilities increase. Lifestyle expands. Everything appears stable. But ownership compounds quietly in the background. Assets grow. Returns build on returns. Leverage expands. Eventually, the separation appears, not through one dramatic moment, through accumulated years. The person dependent on income continues trading time. The person accumulating ownership begins gaining flexibility. Flexibility changes everything. You can wait. You can negotiate. You can decline opportunities that do not serve you. That is leverage, not control over markets, not perfect predictions. Control over your own dependence. When assets grow large enough, income stops being the only engine of progress. Money begins working independently. Effort becomes optional in ways it never was before. That transition rarely happens suddenly. It builds slowly, through discipline, through allocation, through patience. And that is what most people were never taught. The goal of earning money is not simply to sustain life. The goal is to redirect earning into systems that compound. From labor to ownership, from income to leverage, from effort to assets. Once that shift begins, the system starts behaving very differently. You are no longer only participating in it, you are accumulating influence inside it. And over long periods of time, that difference determines who simply earns money and who eventually builds wealth. If this changed how you see money, subscribe. Like this if it clarified something.